And we're back. Welcome to Print Your Games, the podcast for the gaming 3D printing enthusiast. I'm one of your hosts, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perram.
And I'm Kristen Sowards, also known as Les Fears.
And today we're going to go straight into the topic, gang, because it has a lot to do with what we're doing. We are going to talk about planning a 3D printing project. And what do we mean by planning the project? What we mean is a big old task is ahead of you. You have to 3D print your dungeon. You've decided you're going to get 1 billion minis done. You've got a brand new Warhammer army that just needs to come off that build plate, and you're getting ready to get started. And by having a plan, you can avoid so much wasted printing.
And wasted buying, let's be honest.
So much wasted buying.
I don't know anybody who gets super excited and goes and signs up for 15 different Patreons because they're building an army concept.
Yeah. It is so tempting to when you're browsing through this, you go, "Oh, that's really cool looking models. I'm sure I'll print that army eventually. I'm sure I'm going to need that for a D&D campaign sometime. Oh, that would be perfect for that Starfinder campaign that I'm not currently running, but I'll run it eventually."
I might have just done that, yesterday.
Oh, gosh. So it's really easy to get excited in this hobby, and especially when you're new to the hobby. You start to realize how cheap you can get the models. You've got this brand new printer. You've realized how easy it is to print miniatures, and impulse is king at the moment. And having a plan, just having an idea of what you're going to get yourself into, can really make two things happen. First, to not waste your time, not waste your money, and get a very efficient, good job done that you're going to be happy with. And secondly, to give you an idea of what all you're signing yourself up for. And honestly, a lot of the advice we're going to give today isn't exclusively for 3D printing, because any of these projects done the old-fashioned way, it still benefits from having the plan. But we are definitely going to be talking about it through a 3D printing lens for sure. So let's talk about what big projects we are currently doing that we need plans for. Christian, what's your project?
Well, as we've talked about on previous episodes, I'm currently working through building out 9 different undead armies in my role-playing game campaign that I'm running right now. It's between 3 different interlinked knights, and one of the major bad guys is set up is the Bone Princes, and they're these 9 undead lords that each has their own kind of flavor of necrotic magic. So currently I'm working on the Rhyme Skull, the Ice Lord, and his various creatures. So
that is very interesting. First, you don't just need undead, because thank goodness it seems that every single artist has done their spin on undead. So you have hundreds and hundreds of undead to choose from, but you need them in 9 distinct different styles. And it sounds like you've got the RPG level shortcut kit going. You've got the frost level and the lava level and the desert level and so on.
Yeah, more or less. There's a couple twisted turns. I kind of have an artificer one that's got metal and enchanted rune plating and stuff. But yeah, it's mostly in the classic elements of RPG-ness.
And on the flip side of legions upon legions of conveniently themed and colorized undead, I am planning on jumping into a new game. I have really loved the game Stargrave. Since it came out, it really gives me that same Starfinder vibe. It has a lot of the same kind of art. It's the same freaking color scheme. If you put their books right next to a Starfinder book, it almost looks like they belong together. And a lot of the same minis will benefit me in both directions. So I want to jump into this Stargrave game. Stargrave, not Thunder. I need to jump into Stargrave. I've played a bunch of it on Tabletop Simulator, and I want to actually do it for realsies with my local group. It's a skirmish sci-fi game, so it's one of those games where we're going to be building a small band of exactly 10 figures each, so not a humongous investment. But as the person running the game and organizing the campaign, what makes Stargrave unique is that I also need to have available when stuff goes bad, random encounters. One of the concepts of the game is that you're these rival gangs flying through space, and you don't want to attract unwanted attention. So there is an unwanted attention chart as the fight keeps going on, and I need the
So,
minis for them to jump in to the fight.
so is that kind of like a random encounter mechanic on top of the skirmish? Like my
Yeah.
skirmish data is all the way back from Necromunda. That's when I skirmished a lot.
Right.
And looking at this, it sounds like it's got a little bit more of an RP feel, a little bit more of a narrative.
Yeah.
Are the missions interlinked too?
There are two sets of interlinked missions available. One that comes in the core rulebook, and then a campaign called Quarantine 37, which takes place on the starship. That is space horror, basically, is
Okay.
happening on there. Where
So
I'm just getting ready for the base game, and we're not jumping into space zombies yet. So I just need to get the basic set together.
so what you're
And
telling me is you're not already buying the Space Zombies 2 and using the justification to sign up for another Patreon.
I mean, I'm buying fairly little right now because of this, actually, because I have fallen victim to my own trap months ago.
And already did.
All of my advice that I give on this podcast is usually tied to mistakes I've made myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I have been subbed to Cyberforge since day one, and so I have tons of Cyberforge models that will fit this bill very nicely. But yeah, there's a unwanted attention mechanic when you're in a city, and as the fight keeps going on, like I need to have space pirates, and then ever increasing number of gangers, and like eventually like Terminator armor super troops start dropping in drop pods. I need to have those
So
available.
does who runs the interjectory force? Do you take turns with that, or is it
There's
like
a AI that runs that
okay?
force.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So it's just like a table of they do this round. Okay, that's cool.
And one of the unwanted attentions is a bounty hunter can spawn, and the bounty hunter randomly selects a target, and it just goes exclusively for that model throughout the entire
Yikes.
fight until it takes it down. And then you
That's
lose
not
that
good.
model. And it's a campaign game, so you really don't want to have a bounty hunter make off with your best sergeant.
Right, because they accrue basically like experience points and level, kind of like an RPG character, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like that's what I remember from Necromunda. That's again, I'm sorry that my skirmish experience, though I am interested in skirmish games, I haven't played a lot of the newer ones yet. So
Right. So I picked that as the project to talk about because it contrasts very nicely with your Undead RPG project, and also
yes,
because it's going to touch on a lot of things. I need to put together my warband, my starship crew. I need to put together all of these NPCs and monsters that might show up as random encounters in the missions. Like I need to get something called a sewer dragon, and it's not a cute little kobold.
no, is it a big goo dragon? Print Your Monsters has a really cool goo dragon.
A goo dragon might work for this. I was thinking like a souped up alligator maybe, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, but a goo dragon would be nice. I need a whole bunch of space pirates that are actually just the army that has decided it wants to be in charge now. So they need to be very military, gung ho mercenary types. And on top of all that, I don't play I don't play a lot of sci-fi games, so my sci-fi collection of terrain is tiny. So I'm having to print off a brand new set of terrain for an entirely different genre. So all of this is part of my plan to get ready to play Stargrave for the first time.
Nice. I was told, by the way, to stop looking at FDM printers. So I'm hoping that Santa
Oh,
might have something in mind for that, but we'll see. I've
you'll
been told
notice because the
stop
stocking
looking.
will be really fat.
I've also been told you can't look at things on the porch for the next week. So
Oh, and speaking of, and very much do continue. If you have any questions, contact me, contact the podcast. We are more than happy to help with any 3D printing questions you might have. But a lot of you have and have contacted me about like advice for getting into printers. And I know a whole lot of you have bought your very first resin printers this holiday season. And I am very happy to hear that. We are going to have a very wonderful community out there making our own games very soon. And this does seem to be the year that it's really breaking out. Like last year was great, and it was first movers and first adopters, and now it's really digging into the nerd culture.
Well, it's also been awesome because, because of the unfortunate circumstances worldwide, a lot of people have actually started taking up the sculpting end.
Mm.
It's like when we were talking to Maxim last week, saying that he's crap at painting minis, but he loves, sculpting them. And I think that's not an uncommon story. And from what I've been encountering as I meet more and more people out in the community. And yeah, there's just tons of people that have been shouldering in, and the styles keep diversifying. It's such a cool time to be jumping in. And I've have another friend who also jumped in, so I think I'm up to 3 or 4 who started since we started the podcast.
So let's talk about the first bit of advice I have is when you are wanting to do the plan, the first idea is to actually list what you need. You need to find out what you need to make this happen. If you're doing a group of undead, you need to know exactly what kinds of undead you're looking for. Are you looking for, let's take for example, your weird ice dragon? Is that what I'm looking at here?
Originally, it was a basalt dragon, but I turned it into an ice dragon. Yeah, I have a kind of strategy for how I would do an RPG one. If you want me to go through that,
Sure, go for it. How do you
all right.
strategize an RPG list?
Well, assuming you're playing a level-based game, say like D&D 5e or Pathfinder, any edition, whatever, any game that has like a challenge rating system.
Mm-hmm.
What I would do is say, okay, how long do I intend this bad guy to be in my arc, right? Like, is it a low level bad guy? Is it a high level bad guy? Is it a through the entire campaign level bad guy? And these bone princes are meant to be like all the way through, 18th to 20th level. So they're going to be there looming. And so what I did is started building a challenge rating list of undead by challenge rating, or undead with like a template I made attached to them to kind of like build that out. And that's what became my shopping list for my minis, because I wanted to make sure that I had stuff appropriate to each level range, because I do tend to run a more open, like a sandbox. I mean, there's an overarching narrative, but like they can approach the challenges as they want to, and I try to stay within a level. Like if they go like charging into a big bad's castle, then fine, they're screwed, they die. But like if they're like moving within the frames of what's actual like stuff they're encountering at the right times, I try to keep within a couple levels, or up to a max of like 4 CR above them. So that's kind of where I build that out. And I wanted the dragon that I have that is on there is kind of a mini boss. They're going to kind of encounter it for their next kind of, I think they're approaching at 8th level. And in this game, I think I've mentioned before, there's PC dragon riders that are playing like a PC class that has like its own dragon. So I kind of wanted a dragon versus dragon battle. So I wanted to make sure I had this ice dragon kind of in that niche to be about, it's probably going to be like a CR10 dragon. So it'll be a scary fight for him, especially with the other critters backing it up, because I don't like just one boss. They're going to get hammered. But yeah, building up the shopping list by CR for role-playing games is the way I would go. I know for skirmishing and things, it's going to be point based, right? You're going to have a budget. Is that right?
Well, it's different in there because you need to build your warband and stuff. But for RPGs, this becomes a lot easier if you're playing an adventure path or a pre-written game. You just need to literally flip through the adventure you're running and make a list of the monsters that show up and in what quantities they show up, because you only need enough monsters to cover the time they show up the most. So if you have a group of 3 skeletons in one room and 5 skeletons in the next room and 12 skeletons in the third room, you don't need 28 skeletons, you need 12.
And thus I've just revealed myself as a very, very homebrew centric person who writes their own adventures. But yeah, that's obviously a very easy way to do it if you're using an adventure path.
Yeah. And Ryan's the same way over on No Direction. Like Ryan's like all homebrew, yay, way to go. And then I'm like, honestly, I do like to do homebrew more, but I love running pre-made stuff, because how else am I going to manage 7 campaigns?
You run them all in the same campaign setting, and you share your prep between them.
Such a cheat, and I wish I thought of it. David Wickham in chat. What are we talking about? We are talking about planning a 3D printing project and the steps to go when you got something big on the horizon. How to do it efficiently, save money, and actually accomplish the goal. Like how we plan when we have a big thing. I'm talking specifically about getting into Stargrave very soon, and I'm talking about what I'm doing to get ready for that first game, and that's a key point. So when I made my list, I made a list of all the monsters. Like I'm making my big level list first, which is like I need terrain, I need a whole bunch of these things that can show up on the random encounter charts. I know eventually I'm going to need at least one of each of these monsters that are in the bestiary. And but
Is
once I
there
have
a
my big list,
mhm.
I then look at what do I actually need to play the game the first time. What is the first mission? And that is when I actually start acquiring. So I make the list and then I go looking for stuff I want to do. And David has bought all the crew boxes for Stargrave. That is a fantastic way to get most of the way done for a Stargrave campaign. Those 3 crew boxes, they'll give you 90 minis. You're good. You're good
Are
for a
they
while.
are they prefab boxes that are just already like do you have to just paint them?
You have to. They're modular kits, so you pick the weapons, you pick the head, you pick
Okay.
the armor. It's fun.
Like sprue stuff that you have to
Yeah,
cut loose? Okay,
yeah, yeah,
cool,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is when I go browsing for the big list, I will make a wish list in my mini factory. Is a great way. I make a wish list for each project, and I add things that are possibilities to that wish list while I'm shopping. But when it actually comes time to actually start printing, that's when I make buys.
Mhm.
If I'm going to buy something, I buy it right before I print it.
You are so disciplined that I'm in awe. Like I feel good that I go by challenge rating for when I'm printing usually. Like so
Hmm.
like I'm only making stuff as I need it, right? But
Right?
I am in awe if you're actually waiting to just buy it when you need it. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that is a beautiful thing about 3D printing that you can literally buy file 5 a.m. print file 11 a.m. paint
Hmm.
file,
Mhm.
8 p.m. whatever.
And like a lot of times I don't have to buy because I made the same mistake you did, and I support a lot of Patreons.
It's an investment, not a
Yeah.
mistake. Thank you
Hmm.
very
My
much.
digital pile of shame is large. It is several
It's also caused me
terabytes.
to totally ignore my physical pile of shame, which is an interesting
I've been
quandary.
getting rid of that. No
Yeah.
joke. Since I started 3D printing, I've been like, do I really need this? Nope, eBay. And do I actually intend to paint this ever? Nope, eBay.
I'm in awe. Because every time I like look at my massive darkness stuff or I'm looking over I have this big stack like here I'll make Cthulhu Wars stuff. Savannah and Broadway and I like went on a big shopping spree at the end of Gen Con one year and I was
Mhm.
buying like every horrible monster that people didn't want to take home with them. Because
Oh.
that is the best thing to do Sunday at a con just anyway. So yes, I probably need to come to grips with storage management slash actually selling something.
So what I do to do make that easier is I take all my kits that I have there and I go, can I print something better than this? And if I can, there's no use in me wasting time and paint on it.
But that answer is almost always yes.
Uh-huh. That is. That is almost always yes. Not
Hmm.
always, but almost always it is yes.
Fair enough.
Mhm. Yeah. And so and also very careful when you're shopping for minis. Make sure it's something you don't have in a package already, as we've talked
Yes.
about before the podcast. I
It's very true. It could be hiding in a bundle you already have, and it does not always correlate that for you.
right. I'm looking at you, Titan Forge. You do not make it easy for me to understand what I own of yours.
Very, very true. I'll also throw in yet another obligatory. But if you are buying 6 of them and they're all in a recent Patreon thing, sometimes it's cheaper to go buy the Patreon membership, get the My
Mhm.
Manufactory discount. But remember to unsubscribe to it if you're going to do that, or you'll be like me and be subscribed to too many.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like with Cyberforge, I just like know I'm going to need sci-fi minis, so it's the one that I just keep leaving running no matter what it is because it's like I'm going to eventually want to print some sci-fi stuff, and this is cheap as heck way to acquire a massive collection of sci-fi models, and that is of course where I went to first. So the very first thing I needed was just some boring old soldiers. And would you happen to know Cyberforge has tactical marine units? And it is the most generic. It's like we wanted Cadians to be crossed with the aliens colonial marines and then a little bit modernized. And that is exactly the set they made here.
I would also throw out Puppets War into that one. They have a pretty good marine with like really cool modular heads for like your if you're gonna like give personas to different people. There's some pretty fun. Yeah.
And when you mention marine and sci-fi, like the internet, especially the STL internet, assumes you mean to put space in front of that. So it is often hard. It's like, no, I just needed dudes in space in armor with holding relatively nice looking guns. I did not need
You don't want people in power armor and power fists
I need those models. I do need power armor, but I needed my generic grunts first.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now you're really giving me Necromunda flashbacks because I tried to play Escher and like you could afford like 4 of them.
That's about all I'm going to be able to afford is maybe 1 or 2. I've seen somebody do buy 4 power armor marines, and that was it. That was basically the Stargrave has this rule that you have to bring 10 models to the table, but there are some models that literally cost 0 and are worth just about as much as 0.
So they're like your pit crew. They could just be there to like tune up your power armor at the beginning of the fight, and they're like, "Okay, go."
It's called recruit or runner, and one has they're both terrible. One has slightly less terrible shooting, and the other one has a little bit of extra speed and terrible in every stat.
Now, but can those guys level into like new guys later? Can they become like? There's no like, no getting out of the class.
The only people that level are your captain and your first officer.
Okay. And the rest of them are just stuck. Do you swap them out later? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They will die. You will have an attrition that happens through the course of the game. But
I named those guys. They're gonna die?
Yeah.
No. Not Chad.
Don't worry, they'll be replaced with Chad too, who has slightly better stats because I bought the better Chad.
Nice. Can you ever buy better than Chad? Anyway. Cool. Well, I'm excited to see what you're going there. You said you've got your terrain, you got your buy list for your gang. Or were you? Sorry.
Yeah, so I put together my list for a gang. I'm also collecting the list for the other players so that we can print their gang. So I made my gang, and that's a key. If you're doing an army list, build your list before you start making prints or buying files, because you don't want to buy stuff that you're not going to use. And what if I really wanted to build 12 Terminators? I can't do that. I can't afford that. And I'm going to change my mind. I ended up going with a Psychic instead of a Mystic as my captain, for instance. And it gave me a really great reason to use this not quite Greg Eisenhorn mini that Gamic made.
That sounds cool. Now you're getting me excited. You mentioned Psychic, so now suddenly I'm more interested. I used to play like Grey Knights, I think, back in the day when I was not playing Chaos or Tyranids. So, Psychics.
And I've lost my camera feed, so ignore this for a moment, gang. I have no idea what to do about that. Yeah.
That's not good.
It overheated. The camera overheated.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm just a blank square for a minute for anybody watching the video. So we're sorry about that. I will try to give it a good go after it unheats. It's unreasonably hot in this room at the moment, so that is probably what led to that downfall.
I think, I could kind of spin off of when you're building out your list. I'm building off mine FCR, like I said. And, when I was working on that, I would oftentimes like the Ice Dragon, it came from a set that had other crystalline stuff in it, and that suggested a lot of possible board terrain for me. And I know that's like another reason, maybe like with Titan Forge or with Cyberforge is their tech one, right?
Yeah.
They do themed terrain pieces also, right, with them. So like that's a good, like, even if you're buying it post, you can still look in those bundle releases and not necessarily buy the whole bundle because we're not supposed to do that. We just said so, but you can look through that bundles list though, and oftentimes find like the crate or the the cyber dock station or whatever it is. Oh, you're back. Is that a new kit? No, you were like really big for a second. It was
Yeah,
like
it zooms in for some reason.
demigod
Yeah.
Perram.
Which is exactly what I did, because Cyberforge has like just like Time Forge, they have things, and what in one of their things is this terrain crate, which I have had my FDM printer chain printing like for the past couple days, which I love about FDM printers. You can just pop this right off the bed, hit the print again button, come back in 6 hours, pop another one off the bed. I don't have to clean anything. I don't have to soak it in alcohol. I just pull it off and go.
You can't tell me like I'm so excited for that idea because right now that processing part, especially after embedding that frost base in my foot the other day.
Oh, ouch, 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 ouch.
If anybody looked at and saw my spiky skeleton monsters, they're all in these like ice stalagmite bases, and don't step on those. They're worse than D4s. Yuck. Anyway, so you got your trades, and we all know that the future belongs to shipping crates, so you're just printing off thousands of them, right?
And David's asking when I'll be upgrading to a CR30. Eventually, that thing, it looks nice. I'll have 3 of them hanging from my walls, dropping prints into crates and milk crates below it. It will be glorious, glorious. No, so I'm printing off a bunch of terrain. I got a bunch of spaceships that I did not print the spaceships. I got them like there's a series of events where you need a spaceship because of course you do, and like stuff is at the spaceship, so you go to the spaceship and get the crew off.
So spaceship like spaceship space battles skirmish, or is it interior spaceship?
It's just no. It's just I need a spaceship to put on the battle map to represent that's where the spaceship is parked for this mission.
Oh, like gotcha.
Yeah. So I don't need to be inside the spaceship. There are
you don't
missions
need a playable
inside
interior or anything.
There are some missions where you're inside space stations or really big ships and stuff. But then the whole battle map is just themed to that.
Right.
But I needed 4 spaceships to be at the spaceport for one of the missions, so I just got. There was Starlink, that old video game that just crashed and burned when all the Toys to Life video games. So it is at 28 millimeter scale. It comes with 28 millimeter models that you can use in sci-fi games. So that also helped. Each ship comes with one that docks inside of the ship. So I just bought 4 of those, and they're already painted better than I would be able to paint them. So I'm just going to throw them on the battlefield. But I'm printing some bunkers and some 3D printable buildings and stuff, and focusing on stuff that's going to have a lot of use generically, but also keeping an eye out on specific things I need. I need a group of houses to be in the city center. So because one of the missions has a bunch of houses that are important, I'm going to need grates because one of the missions has steam vents that you need to know where they're venting from on the map. So you need little grates. I need, of course, the tokens, so I added that to the list. But when it came time to print, I'm only printing the stuff I need for the first mission, which means just the urban random encounters that are likely to show up, just the war bands we're going to be fighting with, just the terrain I need for the first encounters, which is a bunch of shipping crates and houses, generic sci-fi buildings. And that I made a list. I got those files purchased, or pulled the files out of my collections for the ones I already had, and then just started printing those files. I'm not worried about the war bot I'm going to need at session 12 because I have lots of time between now and session 12. I can print that one later if we get that far.
Well, and quite frankly, by session 12, there might be a cooler warbot available.
And that has happened to me so many
times. Yes. I mean, like,
my
example with my ice dragon that I made of the basalt dragon, like I was in the planning phases and committed to that, and then the next month they released the ice release that has this big cool frosty dragon that's different and would still be like another cool thing to add to the army eventually, but it was like I'd already kind of committed to the other one. B, it was way more fiddly to build. Like it had I think twice the piece count, and that's something to keep in track of too. Like most, if you look in my manufactory or other places, you can usually see how many pieces the file is in, and know what you're signing up for there. Especially like when I'm doing my stuff, I'm trying to keep up those CRs. I'm sometimes trying to get out something the week before the game, and if I'm gonna sign up myself for something really complicated, I want to give myself a couple extra weeks because trying to print, glue, Prime and build that sucker the day before the game is a nightmare. So,
And to a project I just finished, my High Elf army that I'm using for various different war games, Kings of War, Age of Fantasy, Oathmark, all that stuff. At the time I started building it, there were not very many High Elf themed models available. There was lots of Wood Elf themed models, but not very many High Elf themed models available to 3D print. So I went to my friendly local game store and I said, "Hey, special order me 4 boxes of the Oathmark High Elves and get those in." That $30 a piece. So that was a
yikes.
big investment in cash. And I got some of them, and this is the sea guard I made out of that. And it looks okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. This is the sea guard I printed last week, and it
right.
looks a lot better.
I just know you said high elves, and like since I joined later to this hobby than you, I I am buried in high elf figs,
Yeah.
like buried in.
Yeah. And if I had just been patient because I didn't need my sea guard until this month,
Yep.
I would have had this awesome, cool painted sea guard and not this one. It's like, and this is like a great. I want to put a meme together of like, this is the elf. This is the elf you have. This is the elf she tells you not to worry about.
Yeah. It's funny because I bought some dark Eldar figs that because they look a lot like chitons,
Mm-hmm.
and I had some chitin stuff going on in an old game,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been thinking about that again. I was like, oh, should I start searching for dark Eldar things? And then I like looked at Edge Minis. I think Patreon massive, at least as good as the Dark Eldar box set, and actually more customizable to look less
Yeah.
sci-fi and more chitiny for me. So like super cool, and it's
Right.
way cheap. Patreon, it's only $7, I think. So
So go ahead and make those lists. Like when you find that really cool model that you think might work, go ahead and put it in the wish list and like bookmark it and get ready to buy it. But do not actually pull that trigger until it's time to use it, because you really don't want a folder full of all these wonderful high elf minis that I've bought from different artists. Actually, the one that actually makes me most cringe is my Bretonia folder, the of models
oh
I've bought.
boy,
I bought the Armies of the Old Age set, which was very chunky Lego looking. We want to emulate 5th edition / War Master. I
yep,
bought Highland miniatures set when it came out, and it was so much better. And then the Kingdoms of Mercia came in with the freaking D20 double crit roll, and like, you want Bretonia? How about souped up to 11 Bretonia, where the Grail Knights ride giant wolves into battle? And it's
yeah, yeah.
wonderful.
It's crazy how
Yeah.
much better stuff gets so fast.
No. And then Titan Forge comes in with their own set, and it's like, oh my gosh, why? Everybody's doing it.
I just want more people to make snakes because that's my like questing beast thing right now. Is like I've had like one encounter with that snake army in my game so far,
Mm-hmm.
and I probably have like 7 or 8 armies I've bought of it.
Oh, Artisan Guild's new snakes, those heads
Those
have
are
been part of it. Those are the
yes,
best
oh
snakes I've
yes.
ever seen. They
And it
really are.
irks me because I was like, I'm gonna be disciplined. I don't need more gnolls, so I opted out of their gnoll thing the month before,
Mm-hmm.
and then that cost me the cool uh,
No. The Elder
loyalty
Dragon.
fig. Yes,
Oh, that Elder Dragon looks so good.
it bummed me out.
It's okay.
But
You get a 50% off coupon if you resub.
oh, I resubbed for the snakes, so I literally only missed the 1 month in it.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry.
because I was
Oh.
in for was it Sunken Kingdoms or whatever the one before that was,
Mm-hmm.
like yeah. So I was like, no, I can say no to gnolls, and it's funny because it got me on Arc Villain too. Same thing.
And I understand the want to get the loyalty figs, and some of them look amazing. Arc Villain does fantastic ones. Artisan Guild does great ones.
Clay Sinai does really
Design
really good
does
ones.
really good ones. But don't buy a set of model, or don't buy multiple sets of models you don't want to get loyalty figs, gang, because you can usually get the discount code, and the loyalty fig in most cases is somewhat affordable after the discount code. So, like, Artisan Guild charges $30 for their loyalty figs, and with the discount code, they're 15. So yeah, you basically only cost yourself an extra $5.
I'm clearly the cautionary tale in this discussion.
No, no, these are all things I've done. I've done everything you've said. I have absolutely done it. Oh my gosh. There's another aspect of things you have to prepare for. So you've got your cool, you got your cool undead, and you've got your cool ice dragon. These freaking amazing looking metal blue clear ice skeletons with multiple heads. Where did these come from?
Those were actually in the later release from Print Your Monsters. They're the Hoarfrost skeletons from Print Your Monsters. So it's funny because I had already committed to the Basalt Dragon, but I knew it was going to take longer, so I was kind of doing that, getting ready for it.
Mhm.
And then I was like, well, I'll get these skeletons when they came out. And then I saw the other dragon. I was like, dang it. But I will say this. The cool thing about doing those Hoarfrost skeletons first is it let me experiment on paint schemes
Mhm.
for them before I did the dragon.
Mm.
Because, you know, it was very easy to get like 8 of those out on a single tray. They're really like their tray, their bases, everything all fit on one tray perfectly. I could have probably got more on there, but we know that we shouldn't just fill up the tray to fill up the tray. That's something we're learning, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, but when I got those off, I got to test out the paint schemes, and that's one of the things that's scary to me because you talked about with your test schemes on your
Mhm.
Seaguard. When you have a big fig that takes 9, well, let's say 5 hours to print. I think it's probably took about 5, but that's
Mhm.
like a good chunk of my productive time.
Right.
And
It's a
so to
big
go
chunk
and
of bottle.
yeah, and to screw that much resin and that up and have to strip it all back down and redo it it's crappy. So to have all those skeletons to play with first kind of got me down to a fun reverse zenithal prime thing that I did on them, and I think the contrast popped pretty cool. So
Yeah. And that's another great advantage of being 3D printing and working on any project is that you can, especially with these small minis, is I can test print like 20 of these elves on one build tray, and it will just cost me like $1.50 in resin.
yep,
And I can practice, practice, practice. And it's caused me to completely reevaluate what I think a physical mini in my game room is worth, and it only becomes worth anything if it's huge or it has paint on it. And then
yep,
paint is value because time is value. And
yep.
anything
How
that
much
doesn't have
time?
paint is infinite.
Yep. Oh yeah, and it's still like upsetting, but I'm also the point now where if it's a player character fig, for instance,
Hmm.
I print 4 or 5 of them at least because it's like you said, it's probably 50 cents a buck in resin, if
Hmm.
that, and then you've got spares. So because those are the ones that get handled the most,
Hmm.
and they're gonna get bumped, they're gonna get knocked, they're gonna get the weapons broke off, and that happened even with pre-paints. When we're using those sometimes, but if it happens now, it's just like okay, I guess you can redo your hammer so it looks like your new Magic Warhammer because we're repainting it anyway.
Hmm.
Like, why not? So yeah, it's so much easier, and you're right. You don't freak out as much unless
And
it's the big dragon. You drop
yeah.
that, then I freak out.
And back to when I said only print when you're ready for it, that means you're ready to process it. You either actually are going to use it in a game or you're going to paint it for your army. You don't need to pre-print an entire army at once that you're not ready to paint yet because you've got another 3 armies sitting between it and what you're doing. Remember those Bretonians I talked about? I kept
Mm-hmm.
not only would I buy them, I would print them immediately because you can print minis much faster than you can paint them, and then they just sort of kept sitting on the shelf and then getting well, not replaced, but like, and then the new, better version of the exact same model would sit right next to it, and then the newer, better version of that exact same, like the Grail Knights. They must have had 5 different sets of Grail Knights, which made a very wonderful, happy surprise gift to my friend Pat when I was like, "Hey, Pat, would you happen to want an entire Bretonia army for free?" And I just took a big old like shoebox, completely not even shoebox. It was an Amazon box. It was like two
Yeah.
foot onto a side, filled completely up with all the ones I ended up not choosing my B list. And was like, here you go. Here's 200 Bretonia figures. Have fun.
Dang. That's cool. Yeah, my biggest problem now is like as I'm like shuffling these around on shelf spacing, I smash them or knock them off
Hmm.
shelves. And like, granted, yes, the resin I can print more, and I have the
Hmm.
files still, and it's fine. But that's again wasted time. And so I think you have a great point. If you're not ready to put them into use and get them like properly handled,
Hmm.
you're just creating more opportunity for them to get
Hmm.
damaged and lost. I lost a whole bag of minis for like 3 months.
Hmm.
So like, yeah, keeping up with your workflow is good.
And honestly, if you don't put a ton of effort into the minis, like if these are only like super quick zenithals, like not even like something you did in literally 2 seconds. Like I'm not saying the second you put any time into it, real time into it, it has value. But if all you did was like prime these and shade these with wash, and it's time to just and they don't mean anything to you, then you can print them, use them in the game, and then give them away or throw them away or whatever is
Sure.
because is like they don't need to stay on the shelf if they are never going to get used again. Because
Totally.
when I was working with Tom Tullis a lot from Fat Dragon Games. He often did this demo with the paper terrain when he did the fold up paper dungeons and stuff. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, you can just set when it's time for a fire to break out, he just sets fire to one of the dungeon tiles. It's like because they're
Wow.
just printer paper. They're
So
worth nothing. So
why
whatever.
not? Yeah.
Yeah.
I could also see that being a nice promo piece or a thank you piece, like if you're guesting at a con or whatever,
Hmm.
and it's gonna be a pain to take it home anyway. Just be like, leave it with the host.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Of course, that
not
all
that,
goes away the second you spend 7 hours painting that dragon. Then that dragon's worth something. It's worth the 7 hours you spent painting it.
but that can also make a more thoughtful gift too. Like the Dragon Rider player transitioned from one of my physical groups to an online group, and I actually did sink quite a bit. I don't know if you remember that fairy dragon that I did. It
Hmm.
wasn't perfect, but there was a lot involved with the paint job, and she took that now. And it's on her mantle in her new place in Oregon where she moved. 'Cause she has this keepsake from the physical game, which was kind of neat too. So even the painted ones can
Hmm.
be cool to
Right.
give away.
And then the next step you need to think of when you're planning your project is some of the more boring stuff. But being 3D and printing enthusiasts, we have extra access to solutions to these problems. It's like if this is how are you going to store this stuff? How are you going to set this stuff up? I mean, how are you going to make your game room not just look like the giant pile of sprues in the corner? And you have some options as 3D printing. So for instance, uh, for all my minis, I put magnets in the bases. And for these elves, I have wooden bases that I had pre-cut with the exact size for the magnets I use. But for like my undead that use all resin bases, I just jumped into Blender, made a made a little hole the exact size of the magnet I'm going to use, punched it into all the bases of the resin bases before I printed them, and boom, all my resin bases come out, slap the magnet straight inside, I'm good to go. There's also lots of bases online that have pre-punched magic holes, magnet holes. I 3D print movement trays for my Kings of War armies that have the matching magnets holes in them so that everything bunches together. And then you can, I've seen people 3D print entire miniature storage crates, and like Walhalla is like a great 3D printing project where it's like it's a wall hanging shelf that looks like a dungeon background or a city background or a sci-fi background that has slots for minis that you can store inside of it, and it looks super awesome. And it's a great way to solve the storage problem, the logistics. And for my instance, I use since I magnetized everything, I followed the Goobertown suggestion and went out and bought those brownies pans that he uses, and I just
Hmm.
the magnets stick to the brownie pans. The big cover comes over the top of them, and I can slap them in my storage benches. I also have pull out trays over here
I
that are
actually
steel.
bought those pull-out trays because of you, and
Hmm.
they're great. I use them all of my pre-paints, and then yeah, it went with the same magnet stuff. I'm starting to do that with my resin stuff, but I'm not
Right,
nearly as thorough as you are.
right. You can then make themed boxes for your sets of dice you're going to use for that army, or you can make all the cool tokens. You can make 3D props for the session. You can,
You can make
oh,
paint holders for your
yeah.
contrast paint that you're inevitably going to knock over again.
Oh gosh, you can make wall racks to store your contrast paint in when you're done with it. If your board game, if you have a board game, and this is a project to like 3D enhance, like if you want to play Gloomhaven, the resources to 3D print like terrain and 3D versions of all the cards and every single freaking mini in that box is out there already pre-made for you, and the box inserts can be 3D printed so that like they all have a space inside the box itself. You don't have to go buy a $200 interior box compartment kit.
I saw some really cool HeroQuest boards that people have been making the same way.
And that is I am working on a HeroQuest board for that same reason. I've said this on the podcast using the Kraken Dungeons, and they have the list of exact STL files and quantities I have to print to make the HeroQuest board on their website.
That's cool. So they already have it set up for you.
Yeah.
That's hugely time saving.
Like, is this map, and I just have to print Hall C. It's a 6x1. I need to.
Are those the ones that are set up
M.
to print sideways on FDM? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They also print on resin. So they have a bunch of them sliced for Mars sizes, but if you have a Saturn, you can print every single tile in resin if you want to do that way instead.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. The squares on those, are they inch or are they bigger?
They're inch.
They're inch.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were looking at them the other day, and one of my players was just insisting that they were 32 millimeter. And I was like, I don't think they are, but I was curious.
David Wickham is asking in chat, how do you draw that line for storage or toss? When is it worth having a dozen skeletons in a drawer? The second I need that drawer for something else.
I would also say when you're realizing stuff starting to get damaged or you're starting to make compromises, you're putting things on, I don't know, the top of your falling starship because you don't have room in your storage cabinet anymore, for instance. It's probably time to start thinking about getting rid of some or reorganizing.
If you ever buy the kit that you already had in the box and didn't remember you had it, you need to think about if you need it. For HeroQuest 1.5-inch tiles, they do scale up and they do have an option for that. But if I'm playing HeroQuest on the printed board, I'm going to want to double use out of these dungeon tiles. So they're staying at 1 inch, and I will put the HeroQuest minis on 1-inch bases.
Yeah, wouldn't be hard to make it more usable for sure.
Monstrous Encounters has like an homage set for HeroQuest figures that is perfect, like mirrors the box art for all the characters and stuff instead of there's the models and stuff, but like they based it off the box art. So the barbarian has that sword out in that swing pose and like
which might be another inspiration from somewhere obvious beyond that. Cool.
And then you have to actually print it, and when you're printing this stuff, you got to keep that organized, or else you end up with a big old pile of stuff that you don't know where you put. So I keep I keep two sizes, the quart and gallon size of the Ziploc baggies with the little pull strings. I keep 2 of those boxes next to my printer and the cure station. And as soon as a print batch gets printed and cured, it goes straight into the baggie with all the parts into the baggie. I close the baggie up. I take a Sharpie, label the baggie on the little label section, and then it goes into my drawer. That is all my printed but not processed drawer.
I don't even have that. Wow. I might be ahead on something. As soon as I print it, I assemble it and I prime it. That is my rule right now. That is my rule. Because when I first got into it and I was so super excited, like a little yappy puppy dog, I was printing off just piles and piles. I still probably have about, 200 figs that are just not, they barely got cleaned. I was on to the next tray. So yeah, I won't let myself not prime them at this point, but
that is the smart way to go, for sure. You're ahead of me there. A lot of times where I'll end up is I'll print like all the bodies, and then I'll need to print all the shields, and then I'll print all the bases.
To be fair, you are doing much larger batches of your army assembly because you're usually playing army size. Games,
it's like these the Sea Guard. I need like literally 24 of these just for this one unit in the game, and the game would benefit if I had 2 units.
Yeah, that's a lot. I would get frustrated building them, trying to, because I don't like uniform
Oh.
ranks, and I know people love uniform ranks in wargaming, but I'm just like I would want everybody to be a little different, and
Oh,
you can
that's possible.
customize. It is, but it starts to become a time consumer when you're doing your batch painting, and it looks ratty to a lot of people. I don't know, so I can.
So what I usually do is I try to get as many poses as I can built in Blender.
Right,
At least three. I like to go four or five or more. With these Seaguard, I made four different poses. And then when I'm batch painting, I just group them by pose. And then I make sure that when they are assembled on the tray, well, the command group is unique, so it goes in front. And then the
right.
only thing that isn't unique is the back ranks. And I just make sure nobody's standing next to a version of themselves.
I tried to similarly mix it up and do the y axis flips
Mm.
to try to give it a little more diversity, but
Yeah, y-axis flips works, but not for high elves because they need like weirdly enough, high elves really benefit from almost monoposing them.
well, I also like legit in tactics and warfare. Like if you've got a shield rank, you want to be able to lock those shields. So like you don't want them. They all probably want to be holding the same arm. They probably want to be holding the same pose. Like to get that,
Right. Yeah.
and that's realism in our elves here. So I don't know
Mm.
if it's really important because
Yeah.
honestly, in most of my armies, elves are like throwing up force screens,
Oh
not
no,
using a shield.
I do not believe in fireball fallacy. Like I do not fall into that trap.
Explain that because I'm not sure I follow,
Okay.
and I'm sure our
It's
listeners that don't.
the fireball fallacy is in a world with fireballs, why do you care about realism in X? And it's like, no, just because we have magic doesn't mean the world doesn't also have rules. You can't throw out all realism just because you suspended belief in one direction.
I had not heard that term, but I like it. Well, yeah, I definitely tend to go high fantasy in most of my games, so it is weird sometimes to be like, this person like wants realistic encumbrance rules or whatever. But in your role playing group, if somebody wants that and it's something a player actually gets immersion from, then sometimes it's worth doing it. So.
Yeah. And David Wickham in chat saying no one will look close enough to care you have a bunch of duplicates. To a point, that is true. But in wargaming, they've actually done a bunch of studies and figured out that like brains are really good at looking for patterns and seeing duplicates in crowds. Like when you're making movies, and they often will like duplicate crowd sections to fill out stadiums and stuff without having to hire literally 100,000 extras to fill the stadiums for scenes. And for wargamers, they figured out that for your average unit, just having three poses, like the magic number is three, to where it's enough differences that your brain just doesn't automatically lock in and say something's not right about that. And
Right.
so that's why the magic number is three there.
I think 3, 4, 5, and with modular heads where you get like dozens,
Mm-hmm.
then you can keep things really diverse.
And then you need to have a plan in place to paint these stuff. You've got this stuff done. You've got them stored. You've got it ready for the game. You know what you're going to do with it. Then you got to paint this stuff because unfortunately we do not yet have access to the awesome Hero Forge full color printers that they had to raise millions for. Resin printing is still just the one color at a time.
Those are super cool, but I will say my friend has one for our game and he uses it and it's very nice, but she's very muted.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
like
they, only saying I have to disclaim, Hero Forge sent us a free sample to No Direction when we were doing this. They have improved that. They have
good.
the 2.0 color is much less muted, very much more bright, vibrant. But yeah, first generation they were muted and whitewashed. Then the new ones not so much.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll be happy to see those. But yeah, right now our way is painting.
Yeah. So have a plan to paint, or not paint. Like if you prime in with a zenithal. The trick, a really good trick, is prime in one color and wash it, and that will make a cool looking pawn thingy. As long as a bone skeleton primed in ivory, washed with Agrax Earthshade is good to go enough for your board game. You don't need to. I think it's worth taking the extra step to give it a color prime or a base prime that you intend to paint, and like to not just put gray resin on the table. But
Yep.
there's nothing wrong with single color paint jobs just to differentiate. Red's bad guys, green are NPCs.
Or if you're going for a little diversity, like, and you can spring for it, getting like the goblin green and a zombie green and a tan, and just doing 3 or 4 base coats for, say, your zombie army or whatever it is,
Mhm.
and just then you can take your 3 poses, break them up into groups by color, and you get more diversity by hitting the same poses with 3 different colors or 4 different colors. And so you're kind of doing a multiplication of that look, and they also start to look really mixed up. But you're actually like just doing 1 or 2 coats of primer and some washing on it, and you're getting cross multiplication on how many different looking figs you have. So
And then finally, I will say this with resin minis, put a coat of varnish on them because the paint seems to be allergic to resin, and they chip, they break easier. If you're using tough resin, it bends, but if you've bent something painted, that causes paint flakes. Just put a coat of varnish over top of everything when you're done with it, and you're good to go. Also, by putting a primer coat or a coat of varnish on resin, you are like we're 99.99999% sure that a fully cured resin model is safe to handle. The second that there's a level of paint and varnish on top of that, then it is 100%. We are sure that thing is safe to handle.
do you have a recommended varnish for folks? I'm just curious.
I use my favorite is the Krylon varnishes.
Okay.
I like satin. Personally, I like satin because it doesn't mute the color and it's more durable than the matte. Now, I do know a lot of painters swear by matte, and I will say that the common advice for like the pros will give is when you're ready to finally prime, if you're going to go matte instead of satin, is to first prime gloss because gloss is harder and much more durable, and then put matte over top of that. And you will get a matte finish, and that is super durable. And with resin minis, it's kind of important because that paint and that primer bonds a lot stronger to plastic than it does to resin.
Yeah, I know that a lot of foam crafters recommend the same thing, to do the gloss varnish and then hit it with a matte.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're done.
Okay.
Celebrate. Post pictures all over social media. Spam Instagram. I do know that if you got your models from my mini factory, those artists really appreciate you posting the painted examples on the product page. They love seeing that.
I hadn't even thought about that. I could totally upload some now. Cool. Are we on to news?
And with that, we'll be on to the news. And I don't have much news for y'all today. In fact, I only have one item of news, and it's just a follow up to the news we gave a couple of weeks ago. The Rocket One, that crazy weird resin printer that prints straight onto the liquid vat itself and doesn't use an FVP, is about ready to launch on Kickstarter for pre-orders. So go check that out. It's launching tomorrow at a price. The beginning early bird price is $600.
Yeah.
We do not know how limited those are going to be. We do not know what the full retail price is going to be. There are some actual review units that have made it out into the world to show that the tech actually works. So that's good news because this is a big change in how things are printed. I'll be paying close attention to this one. I cannot afford to buy one at the moment, so I won't be buying one.
Yeah,
y'all.
nor I.
Yeah, but it's definitely exciting, and I think that this will change 3D printing significantly if this is a success. So go pay attention to it. And hey, somebody's got to be a first adopter. If it happens to be y'all, tell us how it went.
Absolutely, would love to hear about it.
And then moving on, what do we have to shout out to?
Shoutouts are also quite small, but good thing because we talked a whole bunch on our other topic.
Yeah.
However, hopefully this would be mostly for people who are listening to to the live streaming audience mostly. The early pledge for Tales of Midgard is up now. If not, even if you're hearing this in the podcast, it'll still be going on when this episode goes out, and it's still a good value at that, I think. But it's the Tales of Midgard. Lots of Viking themed stuff if you've missed it on their Patreon. It's a good aggregation of a lot of that stuff and some cool add-ons, etc. Also, if you missed their prior one with the bases I just talked about with the magnet bases, that is also an add-on for this one, so you have another opportunity to get that at the Kickstarter price. So
Lots of Vikings and shield matings. A lot of these are stuff they have released on their Kickstarter. I think all of it is. I haven't seen anything new.
On their Patreon, yeah.
Yeah, on their Patreon.
But it will be a chance to get them at more of a Patreon level price as opposed to the prices you would be paying on My Mini Factory. So,
and the stuff looks good. They definitely have a unique art style. It's definitely like low fantasy Scandinavian. If you love your Valhalla, if you love playing Skyrim, these are the minis for you. I've bought a lot of these minis in the past, and I very much like them.
they're also, equal opportunity when it comes to skin showing, which I'm a fan of.
I'll have to echo your sentiment on that one.
All right. And I don't think that I have very much else to shout out to.
Nope. And if you wish to hear more, we very much would appreciate it if you gave us a thumbs up, a good review if you liked what you heard, etc. On whatever platform you listen to this on. A 5-star review on iTunes would be wonderful if you thought we were 5 stars worthy.
Thank you very much, please.
If you want to check out more, there's our podcast at printergames.com. And of course, this podcast is available on all the services that podcasts are found. And until next time, just remember, print your games.